Have you ever been scrolling through your feed and seen a really simple math problem with literally tens of thousands of angry comments underneath it? People furiously arguing over what seems like basic arithmetic, calling each other crazy because they just can't agree on a single answer? Well, there is a very specific reason why that happens, and we are about to solve it.
Take this expression right here, 24 plus 6 times 2 cubed minus 4 squared. Why on earth do millions of people get this completely wrong? The reason is actually pretty simple. It's because they try to read math exactly like they read a book, straight from left to right. But mathematics isn't a paragraph. It has a very specific, rigid grammar of its own. If you just read left to right without knowing the underlying structure, you're going to fall into a trap and get the wrong answer every single time.
So by the end of this explainer, I promise you're going to totally master the real number system, the exact order of operations, and the hidden rules of algebra. You'll know exactly how to effortlessly solve that viral equation we just looked at, and way more importantly, you'll understand the fundamental laws that make all of mathematics work seamlessly.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the real number system.
Before we can start moving things around and solving complicated equations, we really need to understand the basic tools in our toolbox. And numbers didn't just magically fall out of the sky, right? They were invented to solve very real, pressing human problems. Think about it. 100 centuries ago in the Middle East, farmers and tradesmen used counting tokens just to keep track of their cattle and grain. 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, the Egyptians invented fractions because they literally needed to divide up equal parts of land and crops. But wait, how do you count nothing? If a massive flood wiped out your crop, you had no grain. It actually wasn't until the 5th century AD in India that zero was truly invented as a standalone numeral. And a couple of centuries after that, as commerce grew, negative numbers were introduced to represent financial debt. Every time human society got more complex, our number system had to evolve right alongside it.
Because of that evolution, we can actually think of numbers kind of like a set of nesting dolls or building blocks. We start at the very center with the natural numbers. These are the ones you use to count physical objects on your fingers, like 1, 2, 3, and so on to infinity. Now, if we take those counting numbers and simply add 0 to the mix, we expand outward to the whole numbers. And if we expand our perspective outward one more time to include the opposites, the negatives, we get the integers. So the integers are everything from negative infinity through 0 all the way to positive infinity. As long as they are whole steps, they nest perfectly inside one another.
But what happens when you divide an integer by another integer? That brings us to rational versus irrational numbers. A rational number is any number that can be written as a perfect fraction, like 15 over 8. If you convert it to a decimal, a rational number will either stop entirely, giving you a terminating decimal, like 1.875, or it'll repeat a clear pattern forever, like 0.363636. But an irrational number? Oh, that's where things get wild. These are numbers that absolutely cannot be written as a simple fraction. Their decimals go on forever to infinity without ever repeating a single pattern. If you've ever looked at the square root of 2 or the famous number pi, you are looking at irrational numbers.
Wait, hold on, this is absolutely crucial. Let's do a really quick check. Is 0 a positive or a negative integer? It's a trick question. 0 is the true neutral base state. It's an integer, yes, for sure, but it is considered neither positive nor negative. It's literally the exact boundary line separating the positive and negative sides of the real number line.
Okay, let's move on to Section 2, Order of Operations Rules.
Now that we understand the numbers themselves, let's talk about the formula for actually operating on them. Enter the ultimate roadmap for evaluating math, PEMDAS. This is the systematic sequence we all must agree on so that an equation doesn't have 10 different answers depending on who is looking at it. Step 1. Simplify inside parentheses or any grouping symbols like fraction bars or absolute values. Step 2. Simplify exponents and radicals. Step 3. Multiply and divide. But here is the massive mistake people make. You must perform multiplication and division from left to right exactly as they appear. Multiplication does not automatically beat division. They are totally equal. You just read them left to right when you reach step 3. Step 4 is exactly the same. Add and subtract. Again, strictly reading from left to right.
So let's apply this directly to our viral problem from the beginning. Let's solve it together, step by step. We start with the original expression, 24 plus 6 times 2 cubed minus 4 squared. There are no parentheses here, so we skip right to step 2, exponents. 2 cubed is 8, and 4 squared is 16. Replacing those, our new expression is 24 plus 6 times 8 minus 16. Next step, multiply or divide. We've got 6 times 8 right in the middle, which is 48. Now we drop that in to get 24 plus 48 minus 16. Finally, we add and subtract, moving strictly from left to right. 24 plus 48 is 72. 72 minus 16 gives us our final, undeniable answer, 56. No arguments in the comment section needed, just pure logic.
Which brings us to Section 3, Properties of Real Numbers.
Now let's look at the physical laws of math. These dictate what we are legally allowed to do when we're moving numbers around within an equation. You might ask, well, why do we even need special properties? Consider this brilliant real-life analogy. It does not make a difference if we put on the right shoe before the left. However, it does matter whether we put on shoes or socks first. In math, the order of certain operations simply doesn't matter at all. You can swap them around without ruining your result. But for other operations, if you mix up the order, the whole mathematical system breaks down.
Let's define the first two legal moves. The commutative property is all about moving, or commuting. It tells us that A plus B equals B plus A, or -2 plus 7 is the exact same as 7 plus -2. The order changes, but the result doesn't. The associative property is about grouping, or who numbers associate with. If you're adding three numbers together, you can place your parentheses to group the first two or the last two, and the final sum remains exactly the same. Both of these properties apply beautifully to addition and multiplication. All right, time for another quick retention check. Do you think these properties work for subtraction and division? Think about it for a second. Is 17 minus 5 the same thing as 5 minus 17? Absolutely not. 12 does not equal -12. This is a huge student confusion point. Neither subtraction nor division are commutative or associative. Order absolutely matters for them, just like the shoes and socks.
And this brilliantly illustrates a real game changer, the distributive property. It's unique because it combines addition and multiplication into one rule. If you have a factor multiplied by a sum inside parentheses, like a times the quantity b plus c, you distribute the a to both terms. That gives you ab plus ac. This is incredibly useful for subtracting a whole group of numbers. Instead of making subtraction errors, you can distribute a -1 across the parentheses. Changing subtraction into adding negative numbers is a total pro trick to avoid dropping signs as you calculate.
Let's move along and see how this builds into our final properties, identity and inverse. Identity properties are all about staying exactly the same. If you add 0 to any number or multiply any number by 1, it keeps its original identity. There are no exceptions to this. Inverse properties, on the other hand, are how you undo a number to get back to those identities. To undo addition, you add the opposite, like adding -8 to 8 to get back to 0. To undo multiplication, you multiply by the reciprocal, like multiplying -2/3 by -3/2 to get back to 1.
Home stretch now. Section 4, Evaluating Algebraic Expressions.
Now that we have all the rules down, let's enter the final blueprint phase. You might be asking yourself, why do we even put letters in math in the first place? An algebraic expression is just a collection of numbers and letters joined by the operations we just learned. A constant is a number that is perfectly fixed, like a 5 or a 7. It never, ever varies. A variable, which is usually represented by a letter like x or y, is essentially just a placeholder. It can take on different assigned values depending on the specific scenario or problem you are trying to solve.
When a teacher asks you to evaluate an algebraic expression, it sounds complicated, but it's really just a simple game of substitution. You replace the variable, the letter, with a specific number you're given. Once the letters are gone and it's purely numbers again, you strictly use the PEMDAS order of operations to simplify it all the way down to a single, final value. Let's make this super clear with an example. Take the expression 2x minus 7. If x is just a variable placeholder, watch what happens when we swap it out for different constants. If x is assigned a value of 0, we get 2 times 0 minus 7, resulting in -7. If x is 1/2, 2 times 1/2 is 1, minus 7, giving us -6. If x is -4, 2 times -4 is -8, minus 7, getting us down to -15. The entire output of the expression shifts dynamically just by changing that one variable's value.
Before we wrap up, let's quickly summarize the key points you've completely mastered in this explainer. 1. Numbers belong to specific nested sets, evolving from basic counting numbers up to the complex real number system. 2. PEMDAS is the mandatory roadmap that ensures we literally all get the exact same answer when doing arithmetic. 3. Properties like commutative, associative, and distributive are math's legal moves for shuffling numbers around safely. And 4, evaluating algebraic expressions simply means substituting variables with numbers and simplifying. So we've learned that changing the variable x changes the final value of an algebraic expression. But here's something to chew on before next time. If x changes the value, what happens when we set two completely different expressions equal to each other? How do we work backward to find the one hidden perfect value of x that makes both sides balance perfectly on a scale? That is exactly the puzzle we're going to solve in our next explainer when we tackle equations. Thanks for diving into this with me. Keep practicing those properties and keep questioning